Bloodline Rules is back, as it is official. Cody Rhodes will take on Sikoa in a Bloodline Rules match at SummerSlam, and that was one big thing that happened on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown, the go-home edition before SummerSlam on Saturday in Cleveland. And we now know that if you were wondering how perhaps they were going to work the Bloodline into this and any other additional participants into this main event between Cody and Solo on Saturday, we now know because it's Bloodline Rules, and that means anything goes and anyone could show up to get involved, which we know one of the big teases out there is the return of Roman Reigns, and we will see who else perhaps could return. Could it be Jimmy Uso? Could Paul Heyman? I don't think Heyman's going to get physically involved in the match, but could we see the return of Paul Heyman on Saturday? Could others get involved? Which you know, if you've watched the channel, you know my thoughts on the potential for Jey Uso and maybe Sami Zayn to also get involved on Saturday if they decide to go that route this early as we head towards the Bloodline Civil War. But Bloodline Rules now gives you a lot to work with because you also know that the Bloodline are now the tag team champions. That was the other big development on this week's SmackDown, as it was Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga winning the titles from DIY, just as we all probably expected, based on the fact that the Bloodline won the gauntlet match last week. You had the interactions with Jacob Fatu taking them out. What was it, a couple of weeks ago now? Everyone was wondering if it kind of, perhaps was not ideal for Ciampa and Gargano to get taken out by Jacob Fatu. But we saw once again, this is really all about Jacob Fatu and how they're pushing him in being one of the most dangerous people, not just in this era of wrestling, of any era of wrestling. Like they're really trying to push that with Jacob Fatu, and now he has gold on his shoulder along with Tama Tonga. They are the new tag team champions. And so, because they have won the titles, we now know that adds a little bit extra something into this Bloodline saga moving forward, because if they're the tag team champions, we know they're going to get involved in some way in the match with Cody and Solo on Saturday. But we also know there is the potential now, knowing that Sami Zayn and Jey Uso have defeated the tag team champions on Raw. We know there is the likely scenario where, let's say, Sami and Jey were to win those tag team champions on the Raw side at some point in the future, near future perhaps, you're looking at that potential, kind of showdown between the Bloodline, Sami and Jey. How does it all play out? A lot of pieces still have to fall in place, and we know a lot of them could really start to fall in place on Saturday if Roman Reigns does, in fact, make his return. But there was a lot of that with the Bloodline on this week's SmackDown, which, again, was really highlighted by the addition of Bloodline Rules and them winning the tag team championships. We didn't really talk about Bloodline Rules being a possibility a lot leading into this, but it really does make sense, doesn't it? If you want to add a little bit extra something, and if you also want to tease the fact that you're going to get people involved here, probably outside of the Bloodline, then, you kind of understand it. And I also know there's going to be some criticism to having Bloodline Rules because of why. I mean, it was one thing to do it at WrestleMania 40, right? Where it was kind of we mentioned it, the Avengers Endgame sort of finale there. It was your grand finale where you had all these people kind of wrap up their stories, or at least they did for the time being, where you had Jimmy going after, or Jimmy and Jey kind of wrapping up their story then. You had John Cena coming out, going after Solo to wrap up that part of their story. You had the Rock and Cena interaction. You had the Undertaker come out and go after Rock. All the different things, right? Like we all kind of expected it based on that Bloodline Rules. I don't think you're going to top that here at SummerSlam by having, that level of people come out. You're not going to get Cena. You're not going to get the Undertaker. You're probably not going to get the Rock, I don't think, unless, hey, maybe they've got something up their sleeve with the Rock there, which would be quite something. But this does give you now the opportunity to bring out all of these people, right? How does Roman Reigns get involved in this? Does he get involved in the match now in some way, shape, or form, which I don't think that means Reigns is going to come out and necessarily be in the middle of this match. But does he, make an appearance in some way, shape, or form towards the end of this match as we get to that big finish? Or do they save it for after the match? I think that's probably something that would make a lot of sense, but you just don't know now with Bloodline Rules added into the mix. But again, does that mean we're getting the return of Jimmy Uso? Do we get Jey get involved? Because remember, the whole story here, as we've talked about in recent weeks, was you wanted to get Randy Orton and Kevin Owens out of the way because then Cody goes in all alone. You had Cody here on SmackDown really pushing the fact that he knows this is not a smart decision to go into this match, Bloodline Rules, by himself. but he's doing it. And, you even had the visual of Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, all surrounding the ring with Solo there. They didn't attack Cody, but you could kind of see the numbers, right? That's what it was all about, to give us the visual of seeing, all right, look, I know it's Solo, and people may not, be the biggest fan of Solo, but man, Cody really has a disadvantage here when you look at all these guys, and now they've just won the tag team titles. Jacob Fatu's an absolute madman. Tama Tonga has just won a tag team championship as well. Tonga Loa, has an eye patch, all sorts of things going on out there. But now that's kind of the setup, right? How is Cody going to pull this off? And with Bloodline Rules, you have the opportunity for Cody to pull this off by having a little backup. And, again, I know that's something that'll be talked about a lot too, whether, are you putting Cody in a situation here where he needs help to win? If so, it's the Bloodline. And they're the ones that are kind of, infamous now, not to take Tonga Loa's, catchphrase from him, but that's what they're known for, right? Is having other people get involved. Solo is kind of the poster child for that. And so I think when you look at it from that standpoint, I'm okay with it, because it does make sense knowing that you are going to have some shenanigans here. You are going to have some of that outside chaos, which, as we said, could be a theme of this show at SummerSlam. I don't think there's going to be interference in every match, but boy, a lot of these matches, you can certainly understand why there could be outside interference based on, the other elements that are involved in these matches, whether it's Seth Rollins being the referee for Punk and McIntyre, whether it's Dominic's involvement in Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan. Could Finn Balor get involved in Gunther and Damian Priest? Like, there's a lot of different things here in the way they could play out. So, Tiffany Stratton, Bayley, and Nia Jax, which we'll get to that in a second. But I think that's kind of where we are now, is knowing that you're going to have the Bloodline get involved. So why not do Bloodline Rules to where if you want to bring some of the others back into the picture, which we fully expect, we don't know how they're going to do it, but we fully expect the Bloodline originals to get brought back into the mix here. We'll see how many get brought back at SummerSlam and how many get brought back after the fact. But why not? Why not make it Bloodline Rules? Go all out. Make this somewhat similar to WrestleMania 40, although it's not going to be the same. We know that. So I have no issue with this being Bloodline Rules because, you kind of need to add a little extra something to this, because a lot of people were not going to believe that Solo was going to beat Cody. And so by adding Bloodline Rules, now it's sort of the suspense of, does Reigns get involved? Who else gets involved? At least you're adding a little bit more intrigue, I think, into this main event match at SummerSlam. So that was kind of your big thing here on the show, as I said, was the announcement of getting this as the stipulation for the Undisputed title match, Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa at SummerSlam. The Bloodline win the tag team titles. We know that could lead to the possibility, perhaps with a showdown with Jey Uso and Sami Zayn at some point, if they were to win the tag team titles on the Raw side. So a lot of things kind of in motion here, just with these two big, developments with the stipulation and with the tag team titles changing hands. So that was kind of your theme here of the show, was pushing, will Solo now bring that other championship back? And Solo wants all the titles. We've said that before. Can he actually win the Undisputed title? You guys know my thoughts. And if you want to check out my full thoughts, you can look at the SummerSlam predictions video we did, kind of breaking down all the possibilities and scenarios that could play out, not knowing that it was going to be Bloodline Rules. But a lot of it still applies, I think, when you certainly consider the outside interference likelihood that was already there before they announced Bloodline Rules. So there you go. There were some thoughts on the bigger things on the show. If you wanted to kind of find the other big things, well, here's what else we know. We know that for some reason, LA Knight just continues to break the law. It's this man who has gotten himself arrested at AJ Styles' home. The man who has infiltrated Logan Paul's pool, and as far as we know, may or may not have urinated in the pool of Logan Paul, based on what LA Knight has said. And now the man has stolen Logan Paul's truck. Total attitude era babyface right here, LA Knight, because this man is breaking the law left and right, but we don't care because people still enjoy it, and they're enjoying what LA Knight has been doing to Logan Paul. And as we said, for anyone who thought that Logan Paul would somehow maybe get a lot of cheers in Cleveland, that was very clear from the homecoming segment they did here. That was not going to be the case. Paul, went as far as to say, hey, I know you people can relate to LA Knight because you're tryhards that never achieved anything. And then he turned around and I think in the next sentence said, hey, I'm great. I made it. You didn't. So, he is fully playing this up. you're going to have him as the huge heel in this match, and it was kind of set up here. Cleveland or not, like, it doesn't matter. LA Knight is just wildly over here, and yes, as you guys know my thoughts on this, I think it's got to all be setting up for LA Knight to get this win. He needs a big win like this. And, he's had a lot of matches where he's had opportunities to either win a title or get a shot at a title. Now he's got a chance to win this championship, his first big title victory in WWE, and Logan Paul is kind of the perfect heel playing off of him just based on the personalities, right? And we've seen all the different things that, Logan Paul overly confident here on SmackDown, saying that there was no way that LA Knight's going to take the title from him. Meanwhile, we know how big of a match this is for LA Knight. And like I said, I just don't think he can afford to lose. And you kind of set that up here to where the man did steal the other man's truck. But listen, I still think he's going to steal his title too. But it may be via legal means this time by actually pinning him in the ring 1, 2, 3. I think that's what we're going to get at SummerSlam. And yeah, you just kind of continue to forward, move things forward with that on this particular episode. Not a lot else here when you looked at, the Women's Tag Team Championships. We said last week, we were like, all right, are they going to change both titles on this show? I was like, I don't know. I think it's probably hard to expect them to have 2 title changes, but you felt more confident in the Bloodline winning versus maybe what they were going to do with Bianca and Jade against Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, because we did get a no contest here. We got the DQ after Blair Davenport, attacked Jade Cargill on the outside. That forced the DQ in that match. So just when you thought that Bianca and Jade were about to win the championships back, it's taken away from them by Blair Davenport. So clearly you've got another. Triple H loves the trios, right? Because we've got a lot of those now based on the way they've been doing this, both on Raw and SmackDown, right? And this is where you kind of align Blair Davenport with Fire and Dawn. We know we've got quite a few of those groups on Raw, whether it's Damage Control, Sonya Deville, Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark. You've got Katana Chance, Kaden Carter, Lyra Valkyria. I'm sure I'm forgetting a group somewhere, but you've got a lot of these sort of, 3-woman units right now, and you would think that's going to ultimately mean that Naomi joins the group with Bianca and Jade, so you're likely setting up the 6-woman tag there, perhaps as soon as next week on SmackDown. We'll find out, but maybe they already announced it. I haven't seen it yet, but that seems to be where we're headed on that. But no title switch here, which again I thought probably would be unlikely they'd switch both titles on this show. But at least you still have a feeling we're building towards this again, right? You're going to get the rematch because there was not a clean finish here, and it's really just a matter of when are Bianca and Jade going to win the championships back. So curious to see when that happens. Perhaps it's as soon as Berlin, maybe they do the match at Berlin, or maybe that's where they do the 6-woman tag. We'll find out on that. So no title switch on the women's side. And speaking of the women's side, you did have the backstage interaction here with Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton, where Nia, being the great friend that she is, has gone out. The queen has gotten the princess a new Money in the Bank briefcase, a Tiffy Time special here for this new briefcase. And so, perhaps Nia trying to win Tiffany over to make sure she doesn't try to cash in, although Nia made it very clear if Tiffany did try to cash in, there would be no longer any relationship with the queen and the princess. She'd have to go through Nia. So I've talked about kind of the dynamic here heading into this match with Bayley. Bayley just at times feels like an afterthought here because it really is about kind of will Tiffany cash in on Nia Jax perhaps and the friendship they've been building now over the past little while. And that's why, if you guys watch the predictions video, I'll spoil that one here if you haven't watched it already. But I did sort of lean towards saying I think Nia winning probably is something that makes more sense just in terms of kind of the interactions you've had between Nia and Tiffany Stratton, because I think you can certainly play with that moving forward. Nia just got her this brand new briefcase. If Nia wins, she now has her princess and Tiffany Stratton by her side at all times, but that's also the person who is carrying the briefcase, right? And at any time could decide to turn on Nia, win the championship, which would make Tiffany the huge babyface in this whole thing. She's going to definitely get cheered, and maybe that's what they're going for, right? Because the crowd's already cheering. Go all the way back to Elimination Chamber back in February. We talked about the reaction she was getting in Australia. We've seen the reaction she's gotten in other places. So I still would probably, am most curious to see if that's the route they go, although you could still make the argument that Bayley should retain to maybe give this title run a little bit of extra something moving forward and still have Tiffany there kind of on the peripheral, waiting to cash in. But I am intrigued by the possibility of pairing, Nia and Tiffany together, champion and briefcase holder at all times, because I think that just adds the drama, right, and the suspense and the mystery as to when she's going to actually try to cash in on Nia. But nice little touch here to have the new briefcase and all that, and so we'll see what we get out of it there with that friendship between the two. So elsewhere, hey, Andrade beats Carmelo Hayes again. I don't know if I would have called that, to be honest with you. I thought Carmelo was going to get the win in a pretty lengthy match here. These guys went a long time. Good match. I mean, early on, right after the opening segment with Cody and Solo. And so, good match here between these two, but I thought Carmelo was going to win. If you'd asked me, I thought this was going to be like one of those, 1-1 type scenarios. Carmelo had the, pre-video package that was kind of hyping up the series type feel. Maybe these guys go best of 7 or whatever. But so far, Andrade's up 2-0. So it was not an ideal development for Carmelo. And I still continue to wonder, kind of what's next for both of these guys, because we've talked about it in recent weeks, right? They've been attached to each other, but what are you going to get from both of these coming out of SummerSlam? You would think probably U.S. title type scenario with these two guys. I don't think you're going to have either one challenging for the World Championship or anything right now, but I'm curious to see where we go from here with Carmelo, because I thought this was a match he would win. I thought they would kind of even the series, but they didn't. Andrade able to get kind of the flash pinfall finish on this. And yeah, that was kind of your story here. Elsewhere, Santos Escobar did beat Apollo Crews, in kind of another undercard match here with, Baron Corbin out there trying to hold off Legado del Fantasma. Didn't happen. His leg was held, and so that allowed some shenanigans on the outside. Escobar hits his finisher for the win. Not a lot more to that. We know they've kind of been building this up as just like they have on Raw. You have your kind of undercard stories that are really just there for television. They're not there for pay-per-view, PLE purposes. You guys know I'm going to say pay-per-view in all these videos. I do it every time. But they're not there for PLE purposes, just kind of forwarding the stories, for weekly television, and that's where you're at with those, at the moment with Andrade, Carmelo, and with this Santos Escobar, Legado del Fantasma, Baron Corbin, Apollo Crews type stuff going on now. So that was SmackDown. Again, that was really a show that was built around the Bloodline as usual, but you did have some pretty huge steps forward, both with adding the stipulation and the tag team championships to the mix. You had Logan Paul, once again pissed off at LA Knight. You had Bianca and Jade getting screwed out of their championship opportunity to get those titles back. So I thought, overall, good episode of SmackDown. I enjoyed the storyline development. Again, it's a go-home edition. And, yeah, you kind of already had everything set, but, at least got a big title change at the end of the show. And you did have, again, some interesting additions added to some of these storylines moving forward. But there you go, guys. Those are my thoughts on SmackDown. Let me know what you thought. What did you think of the show? What did you like? What didn't you like on this episode of SmackDown, the Go Home Edition before SummerSlam? As always, be sure to subscribe button, hit the like button as well. And remember, we are doing a live show right after SummerSlam on Saturday. So be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on those notifications so that you know when we go live. And I look forward to talking with you guys, interacting with all our thoughts on what could be a very, very noteworthy SummerSlam in Cleveland. So appreciate you guys watching as always. Let me know your thoughts on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown.